March 23rd, 2018. Andrew McCabe falls 27 hours short of full benefits. Putin wins in a landslide against, Putin. Trump calls for a plumber. The redhead from Sex and the City wants to make love to the state of New York as their governor. And Mark Zuckerberg may finally get that front row seat in Congress. Hold on to your butts. It's the barber. And this is the Beta Files. Welcome to the Beta Files, Week 3. On the show this week, we look at what Cambridge Analytica is in layman's terms and how it may affect you. We'll also note the Russian election of one, break down the actual possibilities of Cynthia Nixon becoming the first lesbian governor of New York. Dr. J will stop by to discuss smartphones in the classroom, and in our final segment this week, a special surprise for you. Funny anecdote before we go any further. This past week, NPR's Steve Inskeep has been filing reports from Djibouti where Yemenis refugees have been fleeing in order to escape the civil war in Yemen. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why this is funny, and it isn't. It has been a great set of reports that have exposed what the refugees have been living through as they have been forced to escape and leave their livelihoods behind for fear of their lives, a story that mainstream media has not given a lot of traction to due to the Category 5 hurricane that is the current White House. However, what is funny is the endless juvenile possibilities that presents itself with the word Djibouti. For example, listeners are sure to chuckle when the passive tone of a female NPR correspondent introduces their own Steve Inskeep deep inside Djibouti. The possibilities are endless, as noted by Inskeep himself, who, earlier this week, took to Twitter and noted in a tweet, and this is his actual tweet, "Just came home from a very serious trip abroad, covering very serious and somber things, and was greeted by a kid who asked me, 'Is Uranus in Djibouti?'" End quote. What makes me laugh isn't the infantile joke that a 12-year-old would find hilarious, but the pure irony that Inskeep himself found funny enough to publicly give us all a good chuckle. In times like these, and even more important with the many tragic stories that clog our news feeds, it is noteworthy when we can find the small ray of light-hearted fun, no matter how juvenile it may appear to be. Thank you, Mr. Inskeep. And now, headlines! Last Friday night, all hell broke loose when Attorney General Jeff Sessions fired former Deputy Director of the FBI Andrew McCabe on the grounds that McCabe was found to not show candor when he approved the release of material from two agents to the Wall Street Journal. McCabe fired back by saying that all the actions he took in the matter were known by senior staff and that the material handed over was not pertinent to the portion of the investigation that was still open. He also attacked the administration for singling him out for things he saw in the aftermath of the firing of his former boss, James Comey. The dramatic battle between Sessions' announcement and McCabe's statement the following day was compounded when the president lobbed more insults at the FBI in his continuing war with the law enforcement. Choosing to use the incident to call out Mueller by name for the first time, John Dowd, one of Trump's lawyers, also came out Saturday declaring that the investigation needed to come to an end as there had been no proof of collusion given by the special counsel. Trump proceeded to continue his attacks through Monday, which drew the ire of McCabe, Comey, a few senators, and former CIA Director John Brennan, who called Trump out when he tweeted at the president, "When the full extent of your venality, moral turpitude, and political corruption becomes known, you will take your rightful place as a disgraced demagogue in the dustbin of history. You may scapegoat Andy McCabe, but you will not destroy America. America will triumph over you." Comey also noted that the American people will know the truth soon about Trump and what happened with Comey, alluding to his upcoming book. All of this just added more dramatic flair to an already chaotic investigation, appearing to quietly make things worse for Mr. Mueller. But then on Monday, The Guardian ran a massive expose that opened the floodgates to the latest Zuckerberg nightmare, Cambridge Analytica. It has dominated the headlines and led to Congress calling on Zuckerberg himself to testify about what can and is being done to make sure that this and other breaches of Facebook in the past 2 years never happen again, or at least are combated at the moment instead of coming out after the fact. Confused as what's really going on with the controversy? Well, you're not alone. So I will try to explain it in simple terms that we can all grasp. A few years ago, two psychologists created a personality test that one Alexander Kogan, a Russian-born American researcher, took and created an app that could be used on Facebook under the title, "This is Your Digital Life." Kogan, following Facebook protocol, noted in the terms of service for the app that the app could collect not only the personal data of the user taking the quiz, a quiz that they had paid for, but also the data of their friends who post information publicly. Of the estimated 270,000 users who paid to take the quiz, over 50 million users' data was collected through the friends loop in the app. All of this is legitimate per the Facebook rulebook. However, the next step is where it gets shady, as Kogan, hired by Cambridge Analytica, handed the information over for a flat $800,000 paycheck the firm claims was to cover the development of the app, not the collection of the data. The claim of what happened once they had the data is that once it was turned over to Cambridge Analytica, it was used to create psychological profiles of users, which led to targeted political messages to sway voters through stories within their news feeds. Facebook claims that once they realized this was happening, they contacted both Kogan and Cambridge Analytica and demanded, through breach of Facebook's agreement, that the data be destroyed. Whether the material was destroyed or not is unknown, though there have been objections by several in the know that it has not been. Facebook is in hot water because the tech giant knew about the breach for 2 years and had no plans on informing the public, hence the disturbingly odd responses by Zuckerberg earlier this week when he tried to comfort the public through promises of tightened regulations and better oversight of the platform. Why does all this matter? Well, other than the fact that we now have yet another way that Facebook was hijacked and used to shape the opinions of voters during the last presidential campaign, it is who funded and oversaw Cambridge Analytica at the time that has red flags flying at full mast. It was funded by massive Trump supporter Robert Mercer, and the board held Steve Bannon as one of its members. Add to the mix that a Russian whose main job is researching American psychological habits and tendencies, and the fact that the Trump campaign used the data, it smells bad, like rotten broccoli and dead cat bad. Speaking of Russian-controlled elections, Putin was re-elected this week as he defeated himself in a race that came down to the wire. The results were so unpredictable there are talks of an investigation into whether he colluded with Russia to get elected. More as the story develops. Trump called Putin to congratulate him on his win, something that apparently his staff told him not to do, in all caps. They learned that trick from the handy explanation on Fox News last week. The story in this one, well, there are two, actually. One, that he had to be told in all caps not to do something he would end up doing, and two, that the memo leaked out, pissing everyone off. John Kelly was reported to be highly disappointed and looking into who leaked the memo so he could take action and fire them. Sorry, I thought that was funny. Highly disappointed. But I want to come back to the fact that they felt that he needed to be told not to congratulate Putin and had it emphasized. The memo also noted that he needed to ask about the 2016 election and condemn, to Putin's ear, the poisoning of the two Russians in Britain. He did neither. In fact, about the only thing he did that the memo dictated was the line, "Call Putin." In a related story, the GOP is officially the party of slime-ridden filth, as a neo-Nazi won a GOP primary in Illinois this week. Arthur Jones, a self-described Nazi, white supremacist, and Holocaust denier, claiming that the Holocaust was nothing more than an overblown non-event and an international extortion racket, was the only Republican to be listed on the ballot, and so he won by default. The party was unable to gather enough support for anyone else, leading to Jones getting the nomination. Even though the Republican Party of Illinois has attempted to distance themselves from him and have denounced him, they have unwittingly allowed this to happen. And now, in 2018, there's a Nazi running for the Illinois state legislature. Just another sign that we're heading in the wrong direction. Cynthia Nixon of Sex and the City fame announced her bid to run in the Democratic primary against incumbent Governor Cuomo in New York. Nixon, if she wins the primary and the race against GOP candidate, would become the first openly gay governor of New York. However, she has been panned in the press for her lack of experience and the focus of her only campaign ad being on the city of New York, giving little attention to the rest of the state. All the shots with Nixon are shot in the city, while the shots of what she alludes to as the poorer parts of upper state New York are void of her presence, leading to criticism of a double standard. Regardless of the criticism, her challenge should prove to be an interesting race for Cuomo and the nation. And finally, John Dowd, personal lawyer to President Trump and head of Trump's defense against the Russia probe, resigned from the legal team Thursday morning. The move comes after the controversial hiring of Joseph DeGenova earlier in the week. The move shakes things up for Trump and his defense, since it was Dowd who made the public statement over the weekend that the Mueller probe needed to be shut down. It appears that the cabinet is not the only group Trump is shaking up. And that's the headlines, or some of them, for this week. Okay, it is time to welcome my dear friend and colleague, Dr. J, who is here to join me in a short discussion on the humanities in education. First, before we get started, I'll go ahead and read. This is an article from the Washington Post that was put up yesterday, saying the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point has dropped is proposing to drop 13 majors in the humanities and social sciences, including English, philosophy, history, sociology, and Spanish, while adding programs with what they call, quote, clear career pathways, end quote, as a way to address declining enrollment and a multi-million-dollar deficit. Dr. J, thoughts?
Well, I was doing great until just now. I've been hearing about this when did this article come out? A couple days ago?
Well, the news broke, I think, Tuesday, but this article was posted yesterday.
We've been waiting for this like a Category 5 hurricane for a long time. We've seen it coming. It's just a matter of how bad it'll be.
Yeah.
And when it'll get here. I don't think it's avoidable. I think a lot of schools are gonna, keep their liberal arts program.
Yeah.
But I think some schools with certain Tea Party leanings are more concerned with the golden calf of money and power and materialism than they are with actually forming fully fledged human beings. And I'm not saying that you don't need things like engineering and business. We have to build roads and bridges, and we need to buy stuff. But if that's all we're going to be, if that's what we're going to boil ourselves down to, I quit.
Yeah,
I'm done.
I feel the same. No, you're talking about we've seen it coming. They actually was this 2 years ago? I'm trying to find the date. 2 years ago, they put out what's called The Heart of the Matter. The American Academy of Arts and Sciences put this out. 2013 was when they put this out. So this has been, and if you haven't read this document, it's all about the attitude towards the humanities and social sciences in our culture, and how we're slowly just peeling away the funding for it and the support for it. In 2013, that's 5 years ago now, and yeah, like you said, we've been waiting for this, and it's first of all, it's Wisconsin, and nothing against Republicans, but this is a Republican-run state, and this is like the old school Tea Party arm of the Republican Party that's running this thing. So there's, and so, which, they push for economic development. One of the things that irritates me, though, and there was actually an op-ed piece about this in the Times, I think it was yesterday, where they were talking about the importance of the humanities to these vocational jobs and degrees, and how we need to push for more humanities because, again, and you and I have both seen this at our institution. It's great that what 2 + 2 is, but if you don't know what to do with it, it's pointless. And I think that's where education is headed at the moment.
It is, and this sounds kind of conspiratorial or conspiracy theory minded, but the people who seek to pass this kind of it's not legislation, but the schools that actually seek to change or eliminate programs, legislators who encourage it actually stand to benefit from it because their electorate are too stupid or lack the critical thinking and knowledge necessary to make informed decisions.
That sounds better.
I couldn't help it. This pisses me off. No, it guarantees that they lack the knowledge necessary to make decisions. They're not dumb people,
right?
But they don't have the training in the humanities, which shows you the world is a lot more complicated than two parties.
Yeah.
It's a big tent. It's more gray than it is black and white, and political parties don't really stand for anyone saying it's complex.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think they miss is, and they always point back to the Greatest Generation. They're like, look at what they accomplished, through the sciences. Yeah, but look at the education they had when they were doing this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys at NASA, they were reading the classics while they were coming up with, how to build a rocket.
That's right. And STEM can be liberating too, right?
Yeah,
it can
absolutely.
Free the mind, but not by itself.
Exactly.
It's just as bad. It would be just as bad to say we're going to have a liberal arts school that's not going to have any STEM.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. These are sister arts.
Yep.
Right? They're sister disciplines, and you have to have it all.
You do.
When you start making cuts, you start cutting away. You start telling people, and I say this to my students all the time, that if you boil education down to job training, you're not actually preparing people for life. You're preparing people for work.
Exactly.
And hopefully you're not at work more than 40, 50 hours a week.
Right.
So what are you going to do the rest of the time? Just someone who's ready to work.
You're going to watch reality TV.
That's about it. What do I tell them at the White House?
Look at Fahrenheit 451. I mean, we point to the fact that he's burning books in that novel, but the other thing that they're doing is they're watching reality TV the entire time that they're not working.
That's exactly right.
And
it controls the masses. It's actually pretty smart. And I don't know that that's their intention, but it works out that way.
Yeah. Well, it does, The other thing, you were talking about the sister arts. One of the examples I give to my students when we're talking about it is I hold up, my cell phone, and I just go to my home screen, and I'm like, if we look at this, who drew all this? It wasn't a scientist. They had a graphics art person in there designing these little icons that are on your phone. And then the engineers took it and made it to where these things pop up when you open your phone. So the aesthetics are coming from an artist where the actual technology is coming from an engineer, and you put the two together and you have a smartphone. You have a pocket computer.
It's the product of combining elements of design and creativity. You can't do it if you eliminate those fields of study that encourage creativity.
Right. There is, all right, so I'm going to play devil's advocate. There is the argument, though, about the philosophy degree, and you and I both have a very good friend who is a philosophy major, who has a PhD. We were talking about this yesterday, about the value of that PhD. So here's devil's advocate for you. What good is a philosophy degree in the real world?
A philosophy PhD has no value whatsoever.
Right.
No. Okay. The philosophy degree, the English degree, and the history degree, if you look at just what it trains you for, you talk to most people who go into law, most of them will tell you they got their degrees, their undergrad degrees in philosophy, history, and English.
Right.
All three fields are reading heavy. All three fields teach you to interpret texts. And once you learn those interpretive strategies, you go into law school.
Right.
But even bigger than that, when you're going out into the world, you start seeing things, and you start reading situations and conversations like texts, and realize this is fairly nuanced, or this thing I've taken for granted is a lot more complex than I thought.
Right.
People who claim to be deeply religious and make fantastical or crazy literalist claims about Scripture, whatever Scripture it is for them, usually don't do so well in things like philosophy and English.
Right.
If you start studying these things and then apply it to your own religious belief, whatever you have, whatever you come up with tends to be a far more complicated and nuanced and rich thing. So even beyond what it does for you, it also makes you a better citizen when it comes to voting.
Right.
Right? But it also makes you better at holding politicians accountable.
Right.
Which admittedly is not beneficial for those people. The politicians, not the citizens.
Right. So, of course, politician, yeah, I see where you're going with that.
Exactly.
That's going back to that conspiracy theory thing.
Yeah.
And, Jason, there is no Illuminati.
I'm just saying it's maybe.
Well, on the flip side of that, now I'm going to play devil's advocate to my own devil's advocate. One of the things that the op-ed in the Times that I read mentions is the fact that you take all those critical thinking skills and you can apply them to literally any manufacturing or engineering job that is out there. And one of the things she pointed out was she had talked to a guy who ran a manufacturing business out in Ohio, I believe it was, working for Honda. They made and distributed parts for Honda. And when she was talking to him about his engineers, he said that, most of his engineers were history and English majors. They had English and history degrees. And but he kept referring to them as his engineers, not as his employees or liberal arts engineers or anything like that. And she said one of the things she was saying is we need to change the terminology, because one of the things that's gotten lost in the value of the humanities is the terminology we have been using to describe the humanities and what the humanities can do.
Mm-hmm. The word soft skills comes to mind.
Yeah, soft skills.
The term soft skills makes me nervous because it makes it sound somehow less valuable.
Well, I tell my students, don't you dare walk up to a psychologist and call it soft science, because they'll punch you really hard.
Yeah.
As opposed to the hard sciences, right?
Yeah. Well, NPR has actually done a story on this several years ago. They said that a lot of smaller businesses and some corporations are beginning to see that all these people who have business degrees and only business degrees lack the creativity necessary
exactly
to be of any use in the business. Right? Because that's kind of what we have now.
Right.
And I think the reason why it's bad now and why you could get away with just getting a business degree 20, 30 years ago is that 20 or 30 years ago, you were actually getting the humanities in high school.
Yeah.
But now it's all in the university and the community college. This is the only place they're getting it. So most of our students, if they've read Shakespeare, they've read one play, maybe two.
Yeah.
And it's not that they didn't read the others they offered. Those are the only two they offered.
Yeah.
When I was in school, when you were in school, 200 years ago, we were reading 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Shakespeare plays. And these were people who were in AP classes.
Yeah.
There was an expectation. So that's the other side of it.
Right.
The high schools aren't doing it, so now we have to do it even more.
Right.
And if they strip it out of the university, who's going to do it?
Well, and that's, one of the reasons why I'm teaching Scarlet Letter this semester is because, just taking a survey of students over the past couple of semesters, they're not reading the Scarlet Letter anymore. They're and it's great that you give 7th and 8th graders the Hunger Games. That's awesome. Give them the Scarlet Letter too. Give it alongside of it, and give them the parallel, because there can be a parallel drawn between those two.
Of course there can be.
So that's part of my frustration with it. And anyway. I thought this would be a much more interesting topic than kids with smartphones in the classroom.
It is, even though I think they're related in some way, but no.
They are.
I don't know that it's gonna spread everywhere. I think you're gonna have some of the more leftist bastions like UNC or Duke or UC Berkeley who hang on. And I don't think anyone's gonna force them not to have it.
Well,
and we're always going to have 4-year liberal arts programs.
Yeah. Well, one of the warning signs for me was when I found out that they had opened up the art school in Winston, where they had a school specifically dedicated to the arts, and it bothered me that they had to do that because they're not doing the arts in regular school anymore, in regular high school. But on the flip side of that, Ezra, my youngest son, he's taking guitar this semester. They actually offer a class on guitar at his high school, and it's a small high school. I mean, there's only like 500 kids there. So, there is small hope that that the smaller local institutions are realizing there's a deficiency, and they're trying to make up for that deficiency in some way. But, I think the universities, it all goes back to that for-profit mentality. It is, and you've got, and I don't know if you've ever, this is someone you didn't mention today that is really great on the subject, Sir Ken Robinson. Yeah. Who has one of the best, I think it's the most watched talk ever, called Is Education Killing Our Creativity? Yeah. Our schools killing our yeah. There it is. That's it. Their school's killing our creativity. Yep. And of course the answer is yes. And it's because they stripped the arts out in favor of STEM. Yep. And only STEM. Well, and Picasso predicted all this a long time ago when he said we're all born artists. The art is taught out of us. That's right. So we're told that it's not beneficial. Mm-hmm. It's not going to help you get a job. It doesn't help the market. And the market, unfortunately, now sets the tone for what education will be. Unfortunately. So you even have teachers, and this is the most disturbing part for me. You have well-meaning teachers telling their students that this is about getting a job. Yeah. And when educators start telling students that, it's the beginning of the end. Yeah. That can't be what we're doing here. We can't just think of our students as future laborers. Mm-hmm. Right? Right. That's not how this is supposed to work. No, I was always taught that education is to build a better citizenship. Yeah. A better better civic body, and that's what education is for. And that, but we're still on that industrialized, model. We've got to get away from it. And that means we're going to have to overhaul the entire system. I don't think anybody wants to do that right now. We'd rather just slap Band-Aids on it. This generation coming up is going to change things. Because the industrial model's dead anyway. Yeah. Yeah, it's just the boomers don't know it yet. It's serving the millennials and the iGens. It serves no purpose for them, and they're going. You're right. They're going to change it. So that's exciting. And I'm excited too. Yeah. Well, everything's going to change. You're going to see 4-day work weeks. Mm-hmm. Honestly, in the next 30 years, and I think sooner, you're going to see people maybe going into the office 4 days a week. Yeah. But then working at home on Friday. Yeah. Because we don't need to be, in a physical location, right? As much as we used to be. Because we have the internet and you can go anywhere. Yeah. You grade when you're not at school. I grade when I'm out in the world. Yeah. And that's only going to become more common as these younger people begin to take over. Absolutely. It's the boomers who are making the decisions to end the humanities right now. Yeah. Yeah. And the older generation Xers, I'm hoping these younger people will come in and say, enough is enough. This doesn't work for us anymore. The industrial model is dead. Yeah. We're not cogs in a machine. I think they will. I think they definitely will. All right, well, that's all the time we got. I appreciate it. Yeah, I figured you'd enjoy this. Yeah, it's nothing like talking about the demise of Western civilization. Absolutely. All right, man. I will. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks again for coming by, and make it a great day, man. All right, thanks, man. Take care. All right, bye-bye. You too. Bye. As always, thanks to Dr. J for coming by and having a nice little conversation with us. That was fun. All right, before we move on to the final segment, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the UMBC Pioneers for the massive upset of Virginia last week. For the first time in NCAA history, a 16 seed pulled off the impossible and made it possible. It was never a matter of if, it was always a matter of when, and now we have the win. This weekend, we'll host the March for Our Lives rallies across the nation. Check the interweb for your closest march if you want to support the movement. That was started and continues to be sustained by those magnificent young people from Parkland. The inspiration of these young people is overwhelming for me and I'm sure many others. Finally, my last segment this week is a bit of a personal one. In August of 2017, The Economist ran a story that detailed a rather surprising and little-known fact. The amount of alcohol-related deaths was triple the amount of opioid-related deaths in 2015 and 2016. Alcohol has become such a largely ingrained part of our culture that we tend to overlook the disease of alcoholism, brushing it to the side until the alcoholic, in full surrender to the disease, disrupts our lives to a point that we demand action from them. It is a vicious time where loved ones are told to let the alcoholic alone, allow them to hit bottom, and then when they do, they will see the error and seek help on their own. The road to the bottom is rough and wild, leaving a ton of damage, irreversible mistakes, and emotional destruction that makes a nuclear attack look tame. Once a bottom is reached, the alcoholic surrenders either to recovery or to the disease and finally death. Recovery, in turn, is just as challenging and presents a lot of emotional unease, stress, and impatience that has to be fought on a day-to-day, sometimes hour-to-hour or minute-to-minute basis. Loved ones of someone in recovery find life almost as difficult as life in an active addiction at times, as chemicals and habits are reset, and the attempts to fight off mental, physical, and imagined cravings becomes a battle inside the alcoholic's mind, a fight that family and friends are unable to understand or sympathize with, as they can only watch and bury themselves in hope. A year ago, I chose not to engage anymore with the disease. Past year has been a whirlwind of blurred moments, combined with moments of clarity and personal discovery of things I had lost 25 years ago. Alcoholism is a heavy burden that everyone around me had to carry in some form or another. Recovery has been no different. There have been long days and longer nights this past year where I kept hidden my fight as I fought tirelessly to hold the monster at bay. I've lost cognitive abilities that are slowly coming back. Memories of events that I swore I'd hold on to are lost. And I'm learning new ways to deal with reality that has become a very real physical and mental war waged every moment when my instinct is to flee to a bottle. But recovery has also brought clarity. Engagement in a world that I'd forgotten, new memories that I can hold on to, and health that has given me the energy I had lost has finally come back, slowly but firmly. My affinity for music and writing is returning as I had lost the joy of creation, but most importantly, I'm not damaging anything anymore. Recovery has brought peace, but did not come immediately. It took time. It took a lot of patience. It took a lot of retraining my way of thinking and engaging with the world. So I'm proud to say that today I celebrate a year of sobriety. It is my triumph for my children, my wife, my family, and my dearest friends. But I live a day-to-day existence. I will not drink today. I cannot promise tomorrow or the next day, but I can promise that I will not drink today. It's that promise that gets me through every minute and every hour and every day.
So after 6.5 years, you're still not allowed to have a drink?
The problem is, I don't want a drink. I want 10 drinks.
Are things that bad?
No,
Then why?
because I'm an alcoholic.
I don't understand.
I know. It's okay. Hardly anyone does. It's very hard to understand.
I couldn't have said it any better. For Dr. J, I am the barber. This has been the Beta Files. Make tomorrow a great day. And always remember, if the sun comes up, there is opportunity. So take it.